How's it going, everyone? My name is Darkness, and welcome to the first episode of A Stoner's Movie Reviews, or ASMR. This new series is going to consist of me hanging out with all of you while talking about and reviewing movies that I've watched recently. The first movie we're going to be reviewing is not just a movie, but it's a sequel film to a video game. However, before we do get into the review, as stated previously, this is a Stoner's movie reviews. So what I want you guys to do at this point is if you smoke, I want you to smoke along with me. Grab your blunts, bongs, dabs, joints, bowls, whatever you use to toke up, and toke up along with me. If you don't smoke, that's perfectly fine too. Just sit back, hang out, relax, chill out for a minute, and let us Stoners do what we do. And we'll be back with you in just a moment to review Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete Edition. Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete is a PG-13 drama action anime movie, which is a sequel story that takes place 2 years after the events of Meteorfall from the original hit game Final Fantasy VII, that was released on the original PlayStation back in 1997. Midgar, now picking up the scraps of the near world-destroying catastrophe that shattered the city, a new threat now begins to stir. Meanwhile, Cloud, still dealing with the guilt and the loss of his friends, as well as a new deadly virus that has infected those around him, Cloud has to find the strength to forgive himself and finally continue pushing forward once again. This movie would be put together and crafted by developers Visual Works, who is the subsidiary company for Square Enix, produced by Yoshinori Kitase, directed by Tetsuya Nomura, and written by Kazushige Nojima, who wrote the Japanese screenplay, while Brian Gray wrote the English screenplay, which we will be talking about today. According to director Tetsuya Nomura in the DVD commentary, Advent Children was initially only supposed to be a 20-minute animated feature similar to another animated feature related to Final Fantasy VII called Last Order. But it was later decided that it would be better to make it a full-length feature due to the attention and excitement from the fans. Advent Children would originally have its theatrical release in Japan on September 14th of 2005, 8 years after release of the original game on PlayStation. While the North American and UK release for the movie was planned for September 13th of 2005, it was unfortunately delayed for about 7.5 months. The North American and UK release would finally be released on April 25th of 2006. Advent Children would then go on to be one of the best-selling animated movies of 2006 in Japan and the United States. At Tokyo Game Show around the 21st to the 24th of that same year, Square Enix would then showcase a new version of Advent Children. They deemed it Final Fantasy VII Advent Children Complete. This new version of the movie would add about 30 minutes, and according to director Tetsuya Nomura, this new version wasn't created to be an update to the original film, but rather a full-blown replacement to the theatrical cut of the movie. This new version of Advent Children was originally slated for a 2007 release. However, instead got delayed multiple times before finally releasing in Japan on April 16th, 2009, and June 2nd, 2009 in North America and the UK. Fun fact, when the complete edition was released, there were 3 different versions that were released alongside. The first was just a standalone DVD and Blu-ray release. The second would include the Blu-ray movie as well as a demo disc for the new Final Fantasy game that was set to come out, Final Fantasy XIII, and the third and final bundle that was released included the Japan-exclusive Final Fantasy VII Advent Children 160GB Cloud Black PlayStation 3 bundle, which came with a brand new PlayStation 3, as well as the movie and a demo disc from the second bundle. Prior to creating this film, The creators had no idea how to create a full-length movie, so they used their prior knowledge from creating short cutscenes from video games to create the film. And it's very, very clear that Advent Children was a love letter to the fans who loved and adored the original Final Fantasy VII, as well as the characters and the world built on the original PlayStation back in 1997. This is proven even further by the creators having the very first thing you see in the movie be an opening message that reads, "To those who loved this world and found friendly company therein, this reunion is for you." So I guess the question is, were the multiple delays worth the wait? Let's talk about some positives and negatives. Starting with the positives. The animation and the CGI are incredible. A lot of the visuals from the opening scene to the opening monologue to fight scenes were so well crafted and easy on the eye. The animators definitely put a lot of love and care into crafting each and every frame of each scene. To this day, the CGI and animation still hold up really well even 20 years later. The smoothness of the skin on the character models to the world created were so well crafted and absolutely deserve every bit of praise that it gets. There was never a moment watching this movie where I was bored by the visuals on display, and the broad spectrum of colors used were enchanting at times. Specifically during the scenes during the opening monologue and the Forgotten City. The love and references to the original game. Throughout the movie, fans of the original game will notice more than a handful of references to the original Final Fantasy VII, and every reference is very much appreciated, and in my opinion, I believe they were very masterfully implemented throughout the story. The soundtrack. You can't talk about anything to do with Final Fantasy VII without mentioning the music, and Nobuo Uematsu does such an amazing job, as always, creating the soundtrack for this film, that just adds to every scene emotionally for the better. There are plenty of new songs to enjoy while also having reprised some old classics from the game with slight changes. Final Fantasy VII music would never be the same without Nobuo Uematsu. The character design. While some of the characters got a slight redesign from the original Final Fantasy VII on PlayStation, all of them, for the most part, are for the better, besides Barrett's design, in my opinion. What they did to Barrett was kind of strange to me. They took a lot of the fashion and the style from around that time in the early 2000s, and in my opinion, they made him look too much like a mix of Busta Rhymes and 50 Cent, and it just did not work for the character of Barrett, in my opinion. But Cloud's redesign in this movie might be one of the coolest and edgiest outfits I think he's worn to date, and it is so well executed. The fight scenes are very well choreographed. Whether there's an on-foot sword fight or an insane over-the-top brawl, all the fights are just pure eye candy. They never fail to get the blood pumping and the excitement flowing. There is particularly a scene later on in the movie where there is a giant creature that gets summoned, and it is one of the most over-the-top fights that I've ever seen, but I love every second of it. Now let's get into some negatives, and for this film I do have a few, starting with the story. For somebody who is a fan of Final Fantasy VII already, this movie can be kind of hard to follow, let alone for somebody who has never heard of nor played the original Final Fantasy VII game. There are plenty of plot points and even an important character that you wouldn't know about nor understand the importance of without reading the side story called On the Way to a Smile, which takes place in between the original game and the movie. This fact alone can confuse and completely ruin somebody's experience of the film without any of this prior knowledge. Another thing that kind of bugged me about this movie is that I wish more party members could have had more screen time. While there are 8 party members you can get in the original game, and while you do see those other members at some points throughout the movie, they get way less screen time than I personally would have liked. Most of the movie is centered around Cloud, the Remnants, and the Geostigma infection. And due to this, most of the main party that fans, especially myself, grew to love throughout the game take more of a back seat throughout the film, and aren't shown nearly as much as I think they deserve to be, And it would have been cool to see them add more to the plot and just have been involved more in the final product. Another issue this movie has, in my opinion, is the English lip sync. There are plenty of moments throughout the movie where the English voices don't match up with what the characters' mouths are doing, and some of the dialogue from the English dub compared to the Japanese dub is also changed, sometimes drastically, which can cause some slight issues with the story or translation as a whole in some scenes. For example, while the tone is fairly similar in a deeper scene that Tifa has with Cloud before he heads into the Forgotten City, the dialogue and even some of the emotion of the wording of the dialogue feels very different between the English and Japanese versions, and not in a positive way, in my opinion. The scene is still great, and I love it, but the Japanese version is personally more impactful with how things are worded. Now, finally moving on to the mixed section. For this, I only had one thing about this movie that I was really mixed about, and that is the voice acting. Some of the voice acting in this movie was really well done. I thought characters like Cloud, voiced by Steve Burton, Sephiroth, voiced by George Newbern, Vincent, voiced by Steve Bloom, Rufus by Wally Wingert, and the Turks, voiced by Quentin Flynn and Crispin Freeman, respectively, did a great job. However, other characters' voices I personally don't think either fit the character they were playing, or their performances just personally didn't work for me. For example, the voice of Kate Sith. While he is only in the movie for a short time, the first time I heard him speak, it completely threw me off guard. And this is coming from an original fan who played through the original game, and like obviously there were no voices in the original game, so they had to kind of make something new, but something about his voice just was off, in my opinion. Overall, I believe if you are a fan of the original Final Fantasy VII or the recently released remake and rebirth, then I highly suggest giving Advent Children a watch, because there are plenty for both fans and newcomers of the series to love. If you can forgive the somewhat convoluted story, because, let's be honest, the story can be convoluted and confusing at times, there are still a lot of things to appreciate about this film, with its over-the-top anime fights, the heartfelt and emotional sequences, or its beautiful visuals all around. I'd give this movie a 6 out of 10. The creators sought to create a movie for the fans of the original Final Fantasy VII video game, and I believe they did just what they sought out to do with making Advent Children. Advent Children is a movie that I personally watch quite often and always tend to get enjoyment out of it whenever I put it on, and I hope you enjoy it as well if you decide to check it out. Have you already watched Advent Children? What are some of your thoughts on this film, as well as some things you may have liked or disliked about it? Be sure to leave your thoughts in the comments down below. Thank you for watching, and I will see you soon with another episode of A Stoner's Movie Reviews. Peace out, everybody.